Hello, hello.
Hello.
Who are you?
Fernando Marrero.
Tell us about yourself, Fernando.
Oh, man, I'm a kid, from the other side of the tracks, from inner city Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Poor, disenfranchised, impoverished family. A lot of disadvantages, pretty much all the stereotypes that, one in America in those types of conditions would be kind of categorized in, that would be me. And, one who's, not supposed to make it, not supposed to be here, but, by the grace of God and, just so many different things. I don't believe in circumstance, but, just by grace, man. And I'm here. I've overcome, championed a lot of obstacles.
So you had a hard life, obviously a difficult start.
Yeah.
What got you into fighting and what you do now? Like, tell us that story.
Absolutely. So so around that time, I got when we came out to Los Angeles, I couldn't really find high-paying gainful employment or whatnot. I got tired of the bullshit jobs, the security jobs, and the different whatever I had to do to make ends meet. And then I said, fuck it, let me go ahead and go back to school. Or what can I do? And military members, veterans, we're creatures of habit. Structure, order, discipline, whatever. And you know what, fuck it. I decided to re-enlist. So this time I chose to re-enlist into the United States Army. And I said, fuck the Air Force, went to the Army, got in the Army. And then from there, I went ahead and decided to go to school. I had the option to revert to the National Guard component of the U.S. Army, to where it's like part-time, to where I'm still a civilian, but I just report for duty training 1 week in a month, 2 weeks in a year. They pay for my college. The time I was attending Santa Monica College, it's a junior college, community college in Santa Monica, California, Los Angeles metro area. It was about 2004, 2005. From that point on, right around 2005, January 2005, I got orders to deploy to the war in Iraq. Okay, well, there goes school, deferment, had to drop out, whatever. Deferment or whatever, pull out, withdraw. And then I went through my training. I was at Camp W.G. Williams in Riverton, Utah, right outside Salt Lake City. Some field training for my MOS, which is my military occupation specialty. This time when I was in the Army, I was a cannon crew member, 13 Bravo Field Artillery. So we worked with like tanks, howitzers, lobbing, big ass rounds of, artillery down range, because that's what I was going to do in the war, blow up buildings and shit and whatever, in the shit in the field. So this was like, early to mid-January. I was going through my training, getting ready for deployment and everything else. And then from that point on, there was a situation where I guess my ex-wife, my first wife from in Philadelphia, my kid's mom, and she had a whole bunch of other kids as well, a whole bunch of different men. She had all of her kids taken from her from social services, DHS, Department of Human Services in Philadelphia. And all the kids were put into group homes, foster homes, into the system, became wards of the state and all that. And they were young, they were babies at the time. And then I was fighting back and forth for all of, 2004, flying back and forth from Los Angeles, because I found out late 2003, and then trying to, get custody or whatever. And then finally, she had fucked up one last time or whatever, and then I was awarded custody of both. First of my son, Fernando, because my son, Jonathan, the Olympian, I didn't know he was mine. First time I met him, he was 4 years old. She was pregnant. She was, kind of messing around with other guys, and one particular guy in particular who was alleged to be the father. But of course, DNA, court systems, they have to establish paternity. I became the father out of a, plethora of possible fathers, potential fathers. And then from that point, I got custody. Well, before I got custody, I got hurt. I got hurt in my training. Blew out my shoulder, torn rotator cuff, separated shoulder, superior posterior labrum. So that pretty much got me medically disqualified, medically booted from the U.S. Army, as well as the war in Iraq. I guess that was a blessing in disguise, but, as a young man, your ego, testosterone, the camaraderie, the brotherhood, you want to be out there with your brothers or whatever, but who knows? I probably would have came back in a pine box and I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you right now, So everything happens for a reason, I believe, divinely. And then shortly thereafter, I got the word and I was awarded full custody of my son, and then subsequently finding out that Jonathan was mine. And then so they had to do what was called an interstate compact. I'm sorry it's taking so long, but it's just the big story leading up to it. It's such a dynamic story or whatever. So they had to do what's called an interstate compact, to where once I got awarded custody, the state of Pennsylvania, the city of Philadelphia had to coordinate with the state of California, where I was living at this time and established, and the city of Los Angeles with their social services department. They come out to my home, and then my girlfriend at the time, my former partner, they investigate, they, make sure, okay, he's this, his finances, his home, everything's intact in order. Oh, this guy's a great guy, he's Army, this and that, yada, yada, yada. So everything checked out. 3 months later, I remember the date still, March 22nd, 2005, I flew out to Philadelphia, met with the social worker, head social worker or whatever. Suzanne Barth was her name. I don't know why I still remember her name. Such a poignant time in my life. Downtown Center City, Philadelphia. Here comes Suzanne Barth, the social worker, along with my two sons, Fernando and John, and they were 4 and 5 years old at the time, just little boys, little babies. They had one book bag each, a teddy bear each, and that was it. Grabbed their hands, went to go see some family, said goodbye to some close family members, went to Philadelphia International Airport, got on the plane, never looked back, flew to Los Angeles, and now from 4 and 5, and here they are, 27 and 25 almost, and just a phenomenal story. So from that point on, it's like, okay, now, fuck, I'm injured, I'm out the Army, I'm fighting the VA and the U.S. government for some sort of benefits, healthcare, whatever. That's another story, but it's something that's very predominant in America when it comes to veterans or whatnot. And I'm just trying to do, what can I do? So I started doing, I was a big guy from playing football, I rehabbed the shoulders best I could or whatnot. Got to points where, I'm lifting weights again, I'm getting strong, I'm started doing bodyguard protection, bouncer type work, Hollywood nightclubs, that was a big thing in the nightclub scene, at the height of its nightclub scene and popularity in Hollywood and Los Angeles at the time. And a lot of the bouncers were from international from different countries, from actually Latvia, Russia, North Ossetia, the Netherlands, and they were like cage fighters or kickboxers, Dutch kickboxers, and they were like, a lot of Brazilians, and they were like, Fernando, you're kind of a big guy. You ever thought about fighting or whatever? And he invited me to some of the gyms, and my first, because I was always an athlete, always a football player. I fought in the streets, stuff like that, but I never had a martial arts background. So I was like, you motherfuckers are crazy. That was my initial, instinct or whatever. I'm like, I don't know if I wanted, you know what I mean? But then went around to some of the gyms, got invited to some of the gyms. I ended up settling down at the Academy of Martial Arts, Team Freedom, with Coach Ahmad Reese, down in South Los Angeles, 43rd and Crenshaw. And basically it was a little dungeon in the hood, South LA, South Central LA. And basically he comes from a lineage and a pedigree of phenomenal fighters and tacticians and minds in the sport and in that industry back then during the pioneering days when it was just no rules, no holds barred. And he took me up under his wing and gave me everything. He birthed me into the game, and then he allowed me to branch out, and I branched out to different schools, trainers, and the who's who I've trained with and been around and come from that lineage. And I just started fighting. I started, my amateur career wasn't considered amateur, it was called smokers. Basically, it's like non-sanctioned, illegal, underground type fights where you fought for free, you fought for little money, or there was gambling involved, organized crime, shit like that. And then, you made a little money or you made a lot of money, depending on whatever. And then my last fight, I fought actually the underground non-sanctioned smoker fight. It was called the Ring of Fire in Monrovia, California. I blew my knee out, tore my ACL and PCL. That was 2008, January 2008. Ended up losing the fight by decision, but actually I'm a warrior, like I'm going to die on my shield. And actually, it was going back and forth with a blown out knee, and finished the fight in full mount and just beating the guy's face in with a blown out knee. He got the decision, so that was the only blemish on my unsanctioned, unofficial record, amateur background, 7-1, so 7 wins, 1 loss. Had to get knee surgery. It was brutal, it was rough. 2 years out the game, 2008, 2009, 2010. Looking fully recovered, training with the who's who of, MMA and BJJ from, Hoist Gracie and Pat King was a black belt under Hoist Gracie. The Machados, trained with the Body Shop, Antonio McKee, and the who's who that come, Rampage Jackson and, Savant Young and Lateef Williams and some of the great guys that came out of Body Shop, Jesse Juarez, Brett Cooper. And then from that point on, just kind of bounced around. And then around 2009, 2010 or whatever, I was in another relationship. Unfortunately, that seems to be the recurring theme in my demise, women and, bad relationships. And, this particular woman, we dated. we were quite serious. She became pregnant. I lost my job. She came from a well-to-do family. I guess, my background or whatever wasn't really so accepting of me or my background because I guess didn't fit the status quo, what they expected and their expectations, what they thought she should be, and then, or who she should be with. And then from that point forward, lost my job. We had, arguments, whatever. And then basically treated me as if I was, insignificant, irrelevant, a bum, couldn't make any money or whatever. And then she decided to get an abortion behind my back at an abortion clinic in Los Angeles. Found out from her mom. Her mom called me. I was frantic, whatever. I ended up calling down to the abortion clinic, talk to whoever, trying to see what we can do to stop it or whatever. And then whatever, representative or whoever was on the phone, intake or whoever, got a little flip it at the mouth and, I'm already in not a good state of mind and I felt disrespected and they said some, bullshit and I said, basically, fuck you, who the fuck you think you're talking to? I'll come down this motherfucker, beat your ass, drag your ass up and down the street, blow this motherfucker, just like, hey, let's take this shit outside, motherfucker. That's how I was and young and, ego and testosterone. They called the cops and I was charged with terrorist threats. And I ended up serving a year in LA County Prison, Supermax, because of that. No criminal background, no nothing, never been in trouble with the law or whatever, but just something just from your emotions getting the best of you or whatever. But still, I didn't think, I guess that type of punishment should have fit that type of situation or the crime or whatever. It was all bullshit. But just from that situation, ended up taking 10 years from my life because 5 years probation and then 10 years without my guns and professional licenses, bodyguard, things that I needed to actually, what I was doing to make money and provide for myself and to provide a good quality of life for my kids or whatever have you. So I basically had to build myself up again from the ground up. So I was incarcerated for a year from 2010 to 2011, got out. And then from 2011, all right, let's go ahead and pick up this MMA thing back up. Got back in shape, hitting the weights again, all that, whatever. Get back in the fight shape, fight camp. And then finally, I ended up having my, my pro debut was actually before I went in, so that's 2010. I lost my professional debut. It was at Respect in the Cage. That was a promotion in California, out in like Pomona, California. I was supposed to fight a guy. We were equally matched. We were blue belts or whatever. He's an ex-Marine, or he was active Marine, but he got orders deployed to Afghanistan or whatnot at the time. So they put a last-minute replacement in, which was, I was outmatched as far as experience and skill level. Steven Martinez, great guy, phenomenal guy. And then finally had a series of injuries and, some brain trauma and all that or whatever, accidents and just from sparring and concussions and military, whatever the fuck. So I ended up finally getting a fight. 2014, my second pro fight, Built for Domination in Arizona, Phoenix, Arizona, against former UFC fighter Jordan Johnson, who actually we were both starting our careers and coming up at the time. So now I'm even more in a deep, dark depression, starting my career upside down, 0 wins, 2 losses, which is very mentally, fucked up, and it fucks with you or whatever, and you start questioning your abilities and everything else. But you come back. I'm just one of those type of, fighter, soldier, or whatever. Hey, I finished and I followed through what we start. Like, I've been through the fire, I've been through worse, and we're going to pull ourselves out this bitch. So I took some time off from the head trauma and everything else and came back. And then 2 years later, 2016, now I'm at Black House and I'm growing and even more. And now I just turned into this fucking animal monster or whatnot with so much rage and anger. And I just always fought with a chip on my shoulder, even predicated more so off my past prior, life experiences and childhood trauma and just life conditions. And so 2016, get an opportunity with another California promotion called Gladiator Challenge. So there's a few of them, like Gladiator Challenge, King of the Cage. They were real big in California. And Ted Williams, who was the promoter, his son, Teddy Williams Jr., they gave me an opportunity, gave me a shot. I started, going on a fucking tear, and I went on a 10-fight win streak, won 2 world titles, basically ended up finishing my career with Gladiator Challenge. I was trying to, a few opportunities, tried to book with like LFA, RFA, LFC, and then they merged and became LFA. And then things, negotiations just kind of fell through. And then, never really got the push or the opportunity to go to like Japan or like Shudo or Ryzen or Dream because, at this time Pride was already defunct. Didn't get the opportunity or the advocacy, that voice, that mouthpiece or whoever to really say, okay, yo, you need to look at this guy. Let's get him in. It's a lot of nepotism, gatekeeping politics or whatever. And I just wasn't part of the in crowd.
How is obviously you're a fighter and you probably got quite a few head punches. Obviously, football, all of that is a traumatic brain injury inducing kind of sports. Tell us about that. Like, obviously, we were doing the retreat plus science on traumatic brain injury. How do you feel? Do you reckon there is an improvement there? Obviously, science will come in later, but for now, end of one. What do you feel?
Absolutely, man. I truly immensely feel there's been an improvement. I have so much more clarity. I don't have the brain fog that I used to have. I mean, I still have some lapses in memory or whatever, but I mean, shit, that's just given the nature of my life and the sports and, work and life experiences or whatever. But there's been a tremendous amount of improvement. I mean, there's so much more focus, so much more clarity. I'm not as on edge. I'm not as triggered. I'm not as angry. I feel that, I'm more confident and hopeful for, the future, for a lot of things, both personally, professionally, and even though I'm going through things personally right now in my personal life, which, happened, started last summer. And, my wife and I were currently estranged and we're separated for, since last August. And then from, my former partner, my son's, surrogate mom, she passed away around that. But everything was just kind of like this snowball effect. And it was just things in life, personally or whatever. And I just was overload, and almost checked out and almost snapped and just lost it and crashed the fuck out. But by the grace of God and, being a part of the MMAFA, the Mixed Martial Arts Fighters Association, which is a union that we're trying to establish for the world of MMA and fighters, and trying to get the Ali Act passed in the world of MMA, because fighters are so overly exploited by a lot of promotions, within the world of MMA, just like in boxing or just any type of combat sports or whatever. Fighters get taken advantage of, underpaid, underappreciated, disrespected, and just, now they're left, minds are broken, bodies are broken, and now they have, internal struggles and just disrupted lives and broken relationships within their family dynamic. But after that, it's just, I just feel so much more clarity. And then within that, it's crazy because, me and Ian McCall, that's how I got in this. And he's part of the MMAFA as well. And we have similar circles. And over the last 20 years, we've always had similar circles, but we never crossed paths. And just divinely by MMFA, he just, put, in the group, and like, hey, I'm doing this work, I'm doing this. And for any of the fighters, I really implore, a lot of fighters, we're macho, ego, I don't need that shit, I don't need no help, or you don't feel like there's a safe space to really talk about that. But I knew that, and especially even more so, what I was experiencing, last summer, like that was my breaking point. And I reached out to Ian, I'm like, hey man, I've done shrooms before, I've done, cocaine, I've done all types of, things to, distract me from, the ills of life. And, I'm interested, I've always seen documentaries on ayahuasca, I've always heard about stuff like that. And I feel that like there's like an ancestral connection. I come from a Latino background, heritage, and also Native as well, Cherokee and Taino. My grandfather, Santiago Marrero, going back to Puerto Rico, and he's also, of Taino lineage, Native indigenous lineage. And, I said, I need to heal. And I think, individuals respectively, like at some point, we are responsible for our own path and our own healing. We are the authors of our own destiny. And how's this chapter, how's this life going to end for us, And I didn't want it to end, because I have, 2 young kids. I have a 4-year-old son, he's autistic. I have a 3-year-old daughter, my baby girl. I love him to death from my current wife right now. And, I got to be here for them, and just like I was there for, my previous 2 sons from my first wife. And, here they are doing great things. My oldest is in the military. He's a grown man living life, doing everything for himself. And then my son, Jonathan, the first Olympian in my bloodline, in our family. That's what, probably less than 1% of 1%, a fraction thereof, who can actually say that they made it to the Olympics, and let alone has accomplished so many other things. So from that point on, I just, reached out to Ian, we talked, and, we really connected and bonded. And then even more so coming down here, we just connected and bonded, and it's an eternal brotherhood along with everybody else here.
Well, thank you, Fernando. Thank you for sharing your story. And let's hope more fighters and athletes gonna find this modality and heal and feel better.